The Tennessee Volunteers and Kentucky Wildcats set to do battle Saturday night at Neyland Stadium. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Vols and Kentucky. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com. Use promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. Promo code SECU to get 20% off today. The Tennessee Volunteers, coming off their bye week, take on the Kentucky Wildcats, who will look to bounce back after a tough loss to the Auburn Tigers over the weekend. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friend Dave Shumate joins me once again. Shu, what's going on? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this game with you.
Yeah, I mean, if like death taxes in Tennessee usually beating Kentucky is one that you can usually count on a year. Going dark mode jersey, I see. CP, going the all black. So that'll be interesting from that perspective. Should look pretty good. I feel like Tennessee does a pretty good job with uniform combo. So excited to see that. I mean, where are we at with this Kentucky team, Chris? I mean, since they've gotten off the bus, when they've gotten back in town from Oxford, it's been a totally different Kentucky team. I thought going into the Vanderbilt game, they were in a great spot. I just thought, no way Florida with a true freshman quarterback making his first start. I didn't care if it was in the swamp against a Mark Stoops, Brad White defense. No way they were going to win that game. Put up 41 points. And then last week, I mean, I picked Auburn. I just thought it was due at some point. It just kind of looks like this team is just, you hate to say that because I don't have any boots in the building, and it's just totally looking at it from 35,000 feet, but they kind of look like they're checked out. So I think you got Tennessee on their race to a playoff spot. Got a big one against Georgia in a couple weeks. Kentucky just trying to get the train back on the track, man. Ever since that Ole Miss game, ever since the big win, they do not look the same.
Yeah, Kentucky, I don't know exactly if they left their talent in Oxford or what happened. The Monstars stole their talent away after that game. But, yeah, they haven't been the same, to your point, Dave. And then for Tennessee, the dark mode jersey is certainly one of the best alternates in college football. They did announce that Monday morning. They're rocking those. Will look beautiful under the lights there on Rocky Top. But, again, like we mentioned, this weekend, 7:45 p.m. Eastern time kickoff on the SEC Network. Tennessee and Kentucky will do battle. This game, of course, Knoxville, Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. Dave, Tennessee is a 16-point favorite. The over-under is set at 45. And you mentioned this series and the series history, Dave. Tennessee leads this thing all time, and it's crazy. The common college football fan may not realize how many times these teams have played. Tennessee leads the series 84, 26, and 9. So this is a series that dates way back, over 100 meetings between the two. The last meeting, of course, was last year. Tennessee won that game 33-27, a bit of a thriller in Lexington as Joe Milton led the Vols to a win. I want to start with the series history, Dave, as we dive in this game, because you mentioned death, taxes, and Tennessee beating Kentucky, especially at Neyland Stadium. And this, Dave, jumped out to me. Tennessee has not lost to Kentucky in Neyland since 1984. What's even crazier to me, looking through the scores, Dave, this hasn't even been a one-score game in Knoxville. Hasn't been a one-score margin of victory for Tennessee since 2006. So every game since that time, they've won by double digits. I mean, it has been.
I'm looking at it. Are you counting a full stadium?
Because
because in COVID, Kentucky won 34-7.
Yeah, I didn't count COVID. You are right. Yeah,
but I know that's fair. To my road game stat, I don't count Alabama's.
Yeah. So non-COVID seasons. Excuse me. The Kentucky folks watching the preview are going to be very upset with me. I skimmed over that one. But either way, non-COVID seasons, Kentucky has not won in a full Neyland since 06. So it has been domination in Knoxville. There's no question. Dave, as we look at this game, look at this matchup, I think you got to start with this. And my big question, the last time we saw Tennessee, I was in the building. That was obviously the Tennessee-Alabama game. Nico Iamaleava had that really strong second half. I thought he grew up in that second half, made some big throws. How does he build off of that, Dave? That's my big question. Do we start to see Nico take steps forward in progression? He's coming off the bye week. This entire offense coming off the bye week. Do we see him maybe not hit them all, Dave, but start to hit some of those downfield shots. He missed them against Alabama still, but I was happy to at least see him taking those shots, right? It was different from some of the hesitancy we had seen in weeks past. Do we finally see him start to connect? Because you mentioned, this Kentucky defense, they've got talent, they've got guys up front. But I think Tennessee should be able to have some success with their balance of run to pass, and also if Nico's getting out of the pocket and using his legs as well. But it all comes back to Nico for me, Dave. Do we see him build off that second half against Bama and, again, just continue to incrementally get better down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, again, these last 2 weeks, Kentucky's made some quarterbacks look like they're kind of getting back on track a little bit. DJ Lagway's first start. Again, the numbers wouldn't have backed it up. They ran on Kentucky pretty well there. But the Trevon Ball kid had a good game, the true freshman. And then last week, Peyton Thorne had one of his better games. So quarterbacks are starting to play probably a little bit better than they're accustomed to seeing. At least Peyton Thorne last week or 2 nights ago against Kentucky at Kroger Field. Could the same be said for Nico? You're right. I feel like every week we keep waiting on Nico Iamaleava to step up and make, all right, is this where he turns the page, right? He's put some quarters together. He's put some halves together, but he's been inconsistent across the board. Is this the week you look good against Alabama in the second half? You have a bye week. Again, Tennessee, Josh Heupel and them are never going to go back to the drawing board. They're still going to do what they do, but can they hone in, continue to play a little bit to Nico's strengths? I don't even think it's a strength thing, though, as I say that. I'm like, even contradicting myself a little bit. Like, the plays are there.
It's just execution. It's execution.
It's just hitting the deep shots. Even the first half against Alabama, you left so many points on the board. About, I think, 2 touchdowns, if you're being honest, for him just overthrowing people. Can he settle in there? Can you calm his nerves a little bit? I think there's no way you can definitively say yes or no. We're going to see Nico turning the page here on Saturday against Kentucky. There's no definitive way to say it. It's just he's had an extra week for a whole week of practice, a weekend to kind of sit back. I'm sure he got off his feet. I have nothing to say he will, but the way Kentucky's veteran defense, which is wild to say, has been allowing offenses to play their best the last few weeks, I don't see why Tennessee couldn't go match that.
Dave, you mentioned Kentucky's veteran defense, which, again, is why it feels so strange to look at the numbers and say what I'm about to say. But, how concerned, if you're a fan of Big Blue, are you about the stopping the run this weekend against Tennessee? We're talking about Nico in the passing game. Dave, Trovon Bowe ran for 5 touchdowns a couple weeks ago in the Swamp, and Jarquez Hunter ran for 287 by himself against that Kentucky defense. What do you think Dylan Sampson's going to do? To your point there, we're talking about the run game. That'll help Nico. If you can establish that, you're making Kentucky add extra hats into the box. That will only help him, I think, open up that intermediate deep balls, get him comfortable, more true one-on-one matchups, which they've been there. The thing about Nico, it's not like he's been bad. You're not sitting, for the season, he's a 63.5% passer. Most coaches I've ever worked with in my career think the realistic percentage should be around 65%. Like when we were at Georgia, Jim Chaney would never recruit a kid unless he was above 65% or more. So I think usually the threshold of that is about 65% as a passer, 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. It's not bad. He's just been leaving a lot of meat on the bone. That is where, again, I don't really know if you're worried about straight up losing the game against Kentucky. If Nico doesn't play well, yeah, this game could be closer than you want it to be. And you got Mississippi State next week, but it's honing these in. It's like, hey, man, we're about to be across the board here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 8th game of the year. We got to start honing this in, or at some point, this is just who Nico is in some way. When do we start having this conversation like, hey, man, just in 2024, doesn't mean he's not going to be great at some point, because I think he is, because he's still a young guy in a very quarterback-friendly system that Josh Heupel runs. I think it's going to click, but it may just be a thing that we're sitting here and we're like, it was never bad, but it didn't fully click in 24. We don't want to be having these conversations after a Kentucky, Mississippi State, and then he's going into the Georgia game. Like, is this the week he turns it around? Not turns it around, but hey, the water starts to boil for him, and we're like, all right, there's Nico. That's kind of where I'm at. Again, I think these next 2 are key to seeing how much he's developed over the season and off the bye week. Yeah, to your point, Dave, you hate to look that far ahead, but, Tennessee does have Georgia looming in a few weeks, and again, to your point, I hope to see Tennessee continue to take the shots they took against Bama, because you want to think, okay, at some point, it's kind of like a hitter in baseball. Like, all it takes is one knock and then positive momentum, and it's just like it's contagious and you just start hitting more and more of them. Like, all it takes is one to kind of open the floodgates, and not to look so far ahead. But it's like, Dave, if you can't figure that out against the next 2 weeks, you're not going to walk into Athens and figure it out. You're just not. We know you're not. You're not. So you got to get it rolling these next 2 weeks if you're Nico, coming off the bye week. On the flip side, Dave, Kentucky offensively. I mean, you mentioned, Dave, my question for Kentucky as a whole, not even just offensively, are they finished? I mean, does this team have anything left in the tank? I mean, because it just doesn't look like it, right? Like, watching them, it really does look like they're done. And I don't know, like, I don't know if there's something more to it. Like, I've got my questions about the Mark Stoops era and have things just kind of staled out and they're stagnant. But I mean, for a Kentucky football team, like, the only way you're going to win this game, is to score. I just don't see many paths to them, Brock Vandagriff and company, having a very successful day offensively. I mean, I don't really see it. Tennessee still got one of the best.
Flip back and forth to Gavin Wimsatt too. He's not much of a vertical passing threat.
I mean, dude, Tennessee's got one of the best front sevens in the country. I don't know how Kentucky's going to move the football with any.
I mean, Chris, to your point, Tennessee's not allowed an offense in league play to score over 20 points, and Kentucky's not scored over 20 points offensively in a game, in a conference game yet, I do not believe. So, like you said, it kind of add the math, A plus B equals C there a little bit. Again, not transitive property. You never do that in sports, as we all know. We've all done it, and we've all paid for that mistake. But that's one of those that you're kind of like, yeah, the answer's screaming at me right in front of my face. I don't know if that's magically just A plus B is equal going to randomly turn into Z over there. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but you're right. Texas A&M, Tennessee, I think two of the better defensive fronts, Georgia in the league, against a struggling Kentucky offense that I don't even know who they really want to play. I mean, I would probably stick with Brock Vandagriff. I know they went with Gavin Wimsatt late, but yeah, I mean, Kentucky's offense, even in the Ole Miss game, outside the 65-yard play on 4th and 7, that was ultimately the big one, put them over the edge. But it just still hadn't been great. Even in the game, they played Georgia close. It wasn't like they were really doing a ton offensively, and Georgia was banged up some. So I'm with you. I don't really see a path where Kentucky goes and scores 24-plus points here, which they're going to have to do, I think, to win this game.
Yeah. And I believe, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but Demi Sumo and Trainum obviously were out last week for Kentucky. So their running back room is hurting. We'll see what it looks like this week. But, I mean, if they're down those two guys again, you're going to need all hands on deck to have any chance. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking, Dave, is potentially maybe we see, can Barryon Brown and Dane Key and Dingle, the tight end, get kind of loose against the secondary. But, I mean, that to me even feels like a stretch. I mean, because you're going to have some sort of offensive balance. You're going to have to give Brock Vandagriff time, and he's going to have to make those plays. And we haven't seen it with any sort of consistency, which is just crazy because, again, it kind of goes to the theme, Dave. You look at this Kentucky roster, and it was one of the reasons I looked at them in the preseason and kind of felt like, okay, this team could win 7-8 games, be pretty solid, and it just hasn't clicked.
Chris, remember all of us talking after the Ole Miss win? We were like, man, this next 3-game stretch, very winnable. This before Vandy even beat Alabama. And I even thought Kentucky was in a perfect spot to get them off the bye week. Vanderbilt coming in, doing all the interviews on every news network around after beating Alabama. And it just didn't work. And you're like, all right, well, Florida, first true freshman start. I don't really care where it is. They can get back on track. No. Auburn is struggling as much as anyone in the country, especially in the league right now, probably outside of Mississippi State or even in the same category if we're talking about win. I mean, they didn't have a conference win. 3 very winnable games. 2 of them played at your house, and you're just in both of them to an extent. Mm-hmm. I mean, you lost all 3 of them by double digits. If I remember right, I mean, what was the exact Vanderbilt score? I know you lost the last 2.
I think that game was like 21.
Oh, sorry, 20-13. So the single-digit game right there. But I don't ever think you were up. You never led in any of those games. Well, you led against Auburn 10-0, but you lost that 24-10. Florida was just a dismantling, 48-12, and then Vanderbilt 20-13.
Kentucky is trending the wrong way. There's no question. They're trending the wrong way. So, Dave, to your point, I mean, again, this 2024 college football season, take it outside of the SEC, it has not been a season in which A plus B is equal to C. I mean, throw the formulas out. It's been unpredictability across the board. But I will say I had a buddy of mine, Dave, and a buddy of ours tell me this. Even in 2007, at some point, chalk wins out. And I just kind of wonder if, like, in games like this, is chalk going to start to prevail? And it's like A plus B is going to equal C. To that point, Dave, again, not to oversimplify it, but when you look at this series and you take out the COVID year, which was just a wacky year across the board, again, Kentucky has not won in a full Neyland Stadium since 1984, and it hasn't been a one-score margin of victory since 2006. Again, give Kentucky credit for the COVID year, but I'm leaving that out intentionally because wasn't packed stadiums, was just a wacky year in college football. So, Dave, with that being said, let's waste no more time and get into predictions. When you factor all that in, when you factor the series history, when you factor where these two teams are, Tennessee off the bye, Kentucky reeling, I'll ask you this, Dave. Give me your prediction. Does A plus B equal C in this matchup, or is it another one of those wacky, inexplicable tight ball games late like we've seen in this 2024 season?
Look, I was more of a history English guy. Math was not my strength. Wasn't terrible at it, but definitely people that were a lot better at math than me. But I can do the basic A plus B equals C. This is definitely C. C is the obvious answer here. Tennessee's defense, one of the best in the league, especially the front seven. I just don't see Kentucky really generating. I would be interested to see what their game plan coming in here at quarterback with Vandegrift or Gavin Wimsatt, where they roll there. But again, I think Tennessee's streak continues of not giving up more than 20 points in a conference game defensively. I think offensively, they have some things they need to work on. Is it probably going to be just clicking right off the hedge? Do I expect Kentucky just to roll out and roll over? No. I could. This is a game Deion Walker shows out where you're just like, where has this guy been for 3 weeks? It's a money game. Some of these guys like Jamon Dumas-Johnson,
he'll turn the motor on. He'll turn the motor on.
I saw JJ Weaver may be out though with an injury, so he may not play. He may not play. De'Aaron Jackson. It's a money game for some of these Kentucky players that are probably not. Because let's be honest, unless they beat Tennessee or Texas, Kentucky's not getting a 6. And then Louisville's not an automatic win this year, even though Kentucky usually wins that game. But no, I don't think Kentucky's going to a bowl game, but I do think they'll come out defensively a little hungry. So I think that's where you're interested to see is Tennessee taking those first few steps. Can Nico take advantage of the shots that I think are going to be there? I don't know if Maxwell Hairston's going to be playing for Kentucky at corner or not, but I don't know. I think this is something Kentucky doesn't do much offensively. I think Tennessee's probably going to lead this game 20-3, maybe 20-10 at half. I think they ultimately end up winning this game 34-10. I'm not going to overcomplicate this one. Again, math wasn't my biggest strength compared to history and English, but I do know basic math when I see it. 2 + 2 = 4. A plus B equals C. I think Tennessee handles this one at home. Maybe still some frustrations on offense because, again, I don't know what you can really turn around in 2 weeks. I think we're going to find out real soon after these next games against Kentucky or Mississippi State. Again, I don't think these games are ever going to be in doubt from a win-loss total, but I think it's going to tell us what kind of Nico we can expect going into Sanford Stadium in about 2 or 3 weeks here when Tennessee goes to Athens with a chance to really punch a playoff spot. So I think we'll learn that. Nico, is he going to be the inconsistent being that we've known him to be so far this year? And again, I think the ceiling's ultimately going to be hit at some point in his career, just maybe not this year. Or does it look like, hey, he's starting to hit those deep shots at the second, third level that Heupel's drawing up? And, hey, look out, man. We got a defense. It's a championship-level defense. So I think that's what you kind of got to keep an eye on there if you're paying attention to this game.
Yeah, Dave, I think to your point, this one is probably more about how it looks than anything. I just – every time we do one of these previews, and you've made this point before too, Dave, like we try to see a path to victory for both sides. Like how can each team win this game, and then you go from there and give your predictions. I don't know that I really see a path for Kentucky here realistically, unless we just you cut the game on and it's just, man, where has this Kentucky team been for the last few weeks? I don't see them finding themselves in Neyland Stadium, a place that's been a house of horrors for essentially their entire existence. I think Tennessee has a lot of confidence when they play these guys. I think the fan base has a lot of confidence, as they should. I think coming out of the bye week, I do think Nico, Dave, will hit. I'm going to say he hits one of those deep shots. He's going to finally connect on one of those deep shots. I don't think he's going to hit all of them. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I think fans are probably still going to leave the stadium wanting more, but I also think that's just kind of that's the nature of the beast because the expectations for this kid are so high. It's like they just, they're never going to be able to get enough more than likely. But I think he will, kind of show signs of progression coming off that Bama game in the bye week. I think he will hit one of those deep shots. I think Dylan Sampson is going to run wild in this game. I mean, Kentucky just has not been able to stop the run the last few weeks. I don't see them against this offensive front and this running attack, again, led by Sampson. I don't see that being the case here. I think Sampson probably goes for $175, if not more. Like, I really think he's going to have a field day against that Kentucky defensive front. I think, to your point, money game for some of the Kentucky defenders, but I think chipping away, Tennessee will chop wood throughout this game, and I think they'll pull away from Kentucky. And I don't see Kentucky having any semblance of firepower or answers to withstand that front seven from Tennessee and do enough to score in this one. So I agree with you, Dave. I think Tennessee gets the win. I think Tennessee covers in this game. It's not a name your score game by any means, but listen, I just think Tennessee still playing for a lot. They're the superior program. They're the superior team this year, the superior product. But where is this Kentucky team at mentally? I think things will start to go poorly for them early in the game, and I just don't know that they're really going to have a punch to respond and fight back in this one. So I got Tennessee 30, Kentucky 10. I'm right there with you, right around that same score. Again, I think Nico hits one of those deep shots. Dylan Sampson runs wild. And I think this is a game that, like you mentioned, Dave, is just never really in doubt. It's going to be more so, how does it look as the Vols build up over these next couple weeks for that epic showdown in Athens against the Georgia Bulldogs? So, guys, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? What do you think takes place on Saturday night at Neyland Stadium when Tennessee and Kentucky do battle? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.